Thanks everyone for joining us for this first part of the board orientation. I'm Frank Kraus. I'm the Executive Director and CEO for FASEB. We'll cover introductions, quite just a brief introduction to make sure everyone gets a chance to know each other a little bit better since our time together in person is very limited. Excuse me. We do have some people who have been on the board but are now in new roles, officer roles, so that they're stepping in and were invited to this orientation. So Eric, Mike, Rachel, and if I missed anyone else, I apologize. Please feel free at any time to jump in and add your comments. And for those that are completely new to the board, or in some cases new to volunteering with FASEB, at any time, please raise your hand and let us know if you have a question or comment, and feel free to use the chat. So with that, I'm just going to go ahead and use the window here in the order that I'm seeing to direct from one person to the next for orientation. Sally.
Oh, yes. Sorry, I thought you were about to tell me to do something. I am Sally Schwetman. I'm the Director of Governance and Leadership Development. Frank is my boss. That's why I'm waiting for him to tell me to do things. And so I will be your main point of contact for anything logistical, any questions you might have while you're a board member. I think I'm always a pretty good place to start. And if I don't know the answer, I'm very, very happy to try and connect you with one of my colleagues that will have the answer. So thank you. And I'm really looking forward to working with all of you.
Thanks, Sally. Pam.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Pam Robertson. I'm new, so I'm the early career representative to the board. And I'm currently at the Broad, living in Boston. I was in Australia a few years ago prior, and that's where I grew up and did all my training and all that. But yeah, at the Broad, I'm a staff scientist there, doing a lot of variant and gene disease analysis type work. And in terms of committees, I'm also on the Professional Relations Committee for the Association for Molecular Pathology.
Thank you. Andy?
Yeah, hi, I'm Andy Chitty. I'm the Director of Shared Resources at Oregon Health and Science University and the past president of ABRF, Association of Biomolecular Resource Facilities. And prior to this, served on the FASEB Science Policy Committee.
Thank you. Raj.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Raj Kumar. I'm a professor in obstetrics and gynecology at the University of Colorado Anschutz Medical Campus. I work with the genetics of HPG axis, or the reproductive axis. I worked as a member on the grants and symposia evaluation committee before for FASEB, but I'm now representing SSR, Society for Study of Reproduction, as a liaison to the FASEB committee.
Eric.
Hello, I'm Eric Kelly. I'm the current FASEB president. It hasn't really sunk in yet, so that's why it looks a little weird when I say that. I'm a professor at WVU and work in redox biology related signaling and obesity, cardiovascular disease. And when I was a board member, I was representing the Society for Redox Biology and Medicine. And a big welcome to everyone. I'm really grateful that you're all here this morning and look forward to getting to know you a lot better.
Irene.
Good morning, everyone. Irene Newsham. So I was a medical molecular oncology researcher for many years, transitioned into training clinical molecular diagnostic technicians at MD Anderson, member of AMP, so I'm the AMP rep. But recently transitioned back to my home state of Vermont. I'm a faculty member at Norwich University, and what I'm doing there is building up their genomics access to technologies, not only for molecular research, but also for forensics. So,
Melanie.
Good morning. My name is Melanie Scott. I'm at the University of Pittsburgh. I am Vice Chair for Research in the Department of Surgery, and I am here representing the Shock Society. I'm a former past president. I've also represented ASIP on the Science Policy Committee and been involved with a bunch of the task forces for FASEB. So I'm really looking forward to becoming a member of the board and being involved with a lot of the decision making that's going on at FASEB. And so it's an exciting time. So thanks for having me.
Thank you. Cliff.
Hi, I'm Cliff Harding, Chair of Pathology at Case Western Reserve University. My research interests are in immunology, especially the biology of antigen-presenting cells and their regulation in infectious disease. I'm here as the treasurer-elect. My society relationships are primarily with the AAI. My role on the finance committee was as or is as a representative from the AAI. I'm also a member of the ASIP.
Great. And I think you introduced yourself yesterday, Richard, as Rick.
Rick. Yes. So Rick Mitchell, I'm professor of pathology at Harvard Medical School and a staff pathologist at MGB, Mass General Brigham. My interests are in solid organ transplantation. I am the representative replacing Chuck Parkos, although he's very unreplaceable, representing ASIP, and I'm past president of ASIP.
Great, thank you. Mike.
Yes, welcome everybody. Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are. I'm Mike Lehman. I am a neuroscientist. I'm professor and director of the Brain Health Research Institute at Kent State University in Ohio. And I've been involved in FASEB for a number of years, first as representative for the Society for Experimental Biology. More recently, as the Vice President for Science Policy. I've just finished my term, and I'm right now starting as President-elect. But I want to just add my thanks to what Eric said. We really appreciate all of you being here, and it's really, there's no more important time for us to come together as a federation than now. So great to see you all.
Judy.
Hi, Judy Cannon. I'm professor in the Department of Molecular Genetics and Microbiology at the University of New Mexico School of Medicine. And I was a member of the Science Policy Committee with American Association of Immunologists, and I am the now Vice President-elect, I think, still figuring out the title for the Science Policy Committee.
Rachel.
Good morning. Sorry for the lack of video, but I'm actually driving right now. So I'm a professor of biology at the University of Maryland, the Baltimore County campus. My research interests lie in development of the brain and metabolism. I have been working with FASEB in various capacities for multiple years on the awards committee, the meetings committee. I was also representing the Society for Developmental Biology on the board, and I am the incoming chair for the committee on DEI.
Thank you. Roberta.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Sorry, I joined late. I just flew from St. Louis to Europe, so I'm a little bit jet lagged. I am Roberta Faccio. I'm a professor in orthopedics at Washington University in St. Louis, and my lab works on breast cancer and bone communication with a particular focus on anti-tumor immune responses. I represent the American Society for Bone and Mineral Research, SBMR. I served as a counselor at the SBMR, as a woman committee member, as a program committee member, and so on. And I'm very excited to be part of the FASEB. I think I also served the FASEB, I'm sure I did, for several years as one of the awardees members of the awardees committees. And I'm very excited to be part of the board. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, we're going to go ahead and jump right into things here. So let me get this switched over. All right, so you should be seeing our orientation program. Again, my thanks for your participation, as well as Eric and Mike's as well. Just we'll go through some of our other officers here during the presentation. And I may be jumping forward, but just in case, this was a good opportunity for you to meet some new people, particularly for those newer to the board. I do also want to note for all of the new board members, you will be paired with a mentor from FASEB's executive committee, and I highly recommend that you make sure you connect with them, but also whoever your predecessor was in your space. So if you're a society representative and you haven't had a chance to talk with your predecessor, please set up a call with them and do that and transition some information. As you're hearing, as you will hear today and over the next couple of sessions, there's a heck of a lot going on that you're going to be jumping right into. So any assistance you can get for people that have kind of been there dealing with it, I think will be a big help for you and thus for us. All right, so what we're going to try and do over the next few orientation sessions is help you understand more about what your role is. You know, what FASEB is, right? And what it does for your societies, what it does for science and scientists. And there are some legal concerns, obviously, sometimes with people. So we want to make sure that we can answer those questions for you in terms of how we work and how we support you in your efforts supporting us. So the way we're going to go through this is first in terms of what you're responsible for, right, as board members. Number one, it's FASEB's overall welfare and making sure that we have a sufficient amount of revenue to support our work and that we're using those resources in a responsible way. We talk a lot about this concept of organizational excellence in order to serve the community most effectively. We also are responsible for the ethics, right, and the policies of the organization, the duty of care for our responsibility for our brand, if you will. The board is my boss, so the board is responsible for hiring and evaluating the CEO and firing the CEO for that matter as well. And then legal compliance to make sure that we stay in line with federal and state regulations. So as I mentioned, and as I think you're aware, we have three parts to this. Today is going to be a general overview, and we're also going to touch very briefly on the current issues that are facing the Federation. Our next session on the 17th will get into our board norms, which were developed by a prior FASEB board, and your duties as a fiduciary for the organization. And then finally, we'll talk more about best practices and engagement, technology tools that we have for you, how we run our Zoom meetings, those sorts of things. All right. So we're going to jump right into governance for the organization. Sally Schwetman, who is with us, is our Director of Governance and Leadership Development for FASEB. Right now, FASEB has 22 member societies. We represent approximately 110,000 scientists. Here you see all of the logos for the societies, including the ones that you represent. Hopefully they are all current. It is a continual challenge for us to make sure we've got the latest logo for the different societies, but you can see that they span really the breadth of the biosciences, from some of the most basic discovery-oriented sciences, all the way into more clinically and translationally focused areas. So a great broad group, and quite honestly, it's this breadth of science and your representation, particularly in volunteer groups such as the Science Policy Committee, that makes FASEB's science policy and advocacy work so special, because it's coming from the scientific community. It's not just coming from some thinking hats in DC. This is really what makes the Federation go. Just a bit of a plug. We still have some if you would like, but FASEB's over 100 years old. We've been doing this for a while. FASEB's had to reinvent itself and how it does things and what it does many times over that history. All of that history has been captured in this book that you see illustrated here, and quite honestly, I reference it often to help myself understand current dynamics and try to learn a bit from the history of the organization. But the bottom line is, we've been doing this for a while. You're joining a very proud and storied tradition. That length of service has resulted in deeply embedded relationships with federal agencies, different staff resources on the Hill and across administrations. We pride ourselves on being a nonpartisan organization, working with whatever groups happen to be pulling the political levers in DC at any one time. So FASEB is a 501c3. That's a nonprofit. As a nonprofit corporation, there's many different types of nonprofits. The C3 designation is focused on education. So while we are an advocacy organization, we're not a lobbying organization. We do some lobbying work, and we'll talk about the difference between advocacy and lobbying. But advocating is primarily educating, and that is a lot of what FASEB does in our work. So again, we are a federation of societies. We do not have individual members. Each of your societies has some different number of members. You've got various membership types, etc. We represent organizations. So as a nonprofit corporation, we have our own staff. FASEB currently has 24, I believe, on staff, plus several partners. We own property. We don't own physical real estate today, but we have computer systems and different things like that that are assets of the organization. And we engage in different lines of business that we'll talk about today. The final item that is sometimes hard for some people to recognize is nonprofit does not mean no profit. Nonprofit is a tax designation. It's not a business strategy. Just as any other business, FASEB has to make money in order to continue to meet its mission. So it's a continual balance, and it's something that the board is specifically charged with overseeing and steering. So you'll hear later that we are looking at some potential changes, but a lot of what FASEB does is, well, everything FASEB does is guided by our bylaws. And first and foremost in that is our board composition. So for our board today, for our voting members, we have the officers of the board, the directors, one per member society, and then we have the early career representatives as our voting members of the board. I am a non-voting member, so in addition to my executive director and CEO role, I also serve as the Federation secretary. And then finally, at our meetings, you'll be seeing several other participants. FASEB has a pretty open board meeting approach. The entire FASEB senior staff is typically at all meetings so that they can answer more detailed questions that you may have. Oftentimes, they will be presenting. Society executive officers often attend. They are there in an observational role, although we may ask them for their feedback and questions from time to time. The society public affairs staff are there for a portion of the time, specifically the public affairs and advocacy discussions that the board has. And then finally, depending upon the topics that are being discussed at the board meeting, we'll invite committee leaders and task force leaders into the meeting as well to present on their topic. The only other item I will just note here briefly, I don't think it's ever come up, quite honestly, is in the event of a tie, the president votes. Otherwise, the president does not vote. I don't think we've even come close to a tie at any one vote. So here's the executive committee for 2025 and 2026. FASEB operates our governance year from July 1st through June 30th of the year. Fiscally, though, so our budgets that we'll talk about are on a calendar year. But here's the executive committee. Eric introduced himself earlier as president and Mike as president-elect. You will be seeing Beth Garvey as well as immediate past president. And here you then see everybody else, including some of your smiling faces on this list. So again, thank you for joining in on this in this work, in this effort. FASEB committees. So actually the structure overall for FASEB from a governance perspective, we have the board that as we've said, right, really establishes those policies, overlooks FASEB as a whole, makes decisions particularly around fiduciary elements, financial elements for the organization. There is a subset of the board, the executive committee, which many of you are a part of. The executive committee acts in between board meetings on items that are timely and need action prior to the next board meeting. The executive committee also is a great to present to and share information with the board to make sure we use your time most effectively. Underneath that, then, there are many committees of the board, and we also have task forces. The difference between a committee and a task force is a committee is ongoing. There's kind of an annual cycle of work that a committee will do. Cliff, as treasurer-elect, represents the finance committee, and there's a cadence that we have with the finance committee, as an example. Task forces have a defined objective, and they have a beginning, and they have an end, and then we sunset them. So here's a list of what we have going on today. Earlier, I just mentioned committees. There are actually two different types of committees. It's a technical difference, but it is important. Some are defined in our bylaws, some are not defined by our bylaws. We try to keep those that are defined in our bylaws to the core minimum. These are the things that we have to make sure we get done. So I mentioned finance as an example, right? An organization is always going to have a finance committee, for example. The ones that aren't defined by bylaws, they may shift depending upon the needs of the organization. So as an example there, we are just now wrapping up applications for the Howard Garrison Fellowship Award Program. That committee meets each year. However, that Howard Garrison Fellowship Program may change at some point in the future, right? We may make it something different. We may sunset it. So since it's not absolute core to the organization, it's not defined in the bylaws. And then the three task forces we'll talk about a little bit later that we have underway. Like most organizations, if not all businesses, FASEB is guided by a strategic plan. Here you see that plan summarized in a placemat style format. And in that, you see both within the vision and mission of the organization that FASEB is focused on, is focused across the biosciences, and we're really focused on being an advocate and working through our member societies to deliver a lot of those services, particularly from an advocacy perspective. 5 objectives that you see there on the right. Those objectives have several different goals associated with them that you can find on the website to get a little bit more detail. But This work guides everything that we do. In your agendas for the board, you will see that we identify what areas of the strategic plan each discussion relates to. And that's purposeful to keep us as staff and you as the board focused on the right items. All right, so how do we do all of this? So first and foremost, we start with that strategic plan. And the first objective on that strategic plan is associated with advocacy for science. That is managed through the Office of Public Affairs. Jennifer Zeitzer is the director of the Office of Public Affairs. She is also FASEB's deputy executive director. So she's my number two, and handles a lot of other things for me. But this first and foremost is the work that she does across the district in particular. Public affairs is broken down into two areas: legislative affairs and science policy. And we have directors over both of those areas. Again, we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get into more detail on staffing. I mentioned the Science Policy Committee earlier. Many people, talk about this as the beating heart or brain, depending upon what your preferred best organ is, I guess, in the body. But as we noted earlier, Joe Yost is our VP for Science Policy. He was unable to join us today. Judy is now VP-elect for Science Policy. Excuse me. And Yvette Seeger is our Chief Science Policy and Workforce Development Officer. So she has authority over that science policy side that we talked about earlier. If you've been a volunteer at FASEB for any amount of time, you know both JZ and Yvette. To be sure, they are the top of the top in DC. And I say that with no humility because I truly believe that for both of them. We're very fortunate to have them. So as anything with your experiments and the work that you do, there's a process to all of this. One of the key processes for FASEB is the development of our policy statements. We're typically, responding to anywhere from 1 to 5 or 6 statements each month in various policy areas. Basically, we start with just identifying that there's an issue. That may be something that the federal government issues, a request for information. As an example, it may be a statement made by someone on the Hill or in the administration, but there's an issue that's identified. We create an action plan. Primarily staff is doing that in partnership with the volunteer leadership. So in most cases, it's Yvette talking with Joe or Judy to create that action plan. Then we move into the Science Policy Committee, where they're going to review the materials. They're going to deliberate. They're going to make comments against staff drafted materials, and then they're going to recommend approval to the board during each of their monthly meetings. Once the SBC endorses it, the board reviews. The board's review is not to recreate or redo the Science Policy Committee's work. It's to ensure that process has been followed and that FASEB's response is consistent with prior statements that have been made. It's your duty of care for the organization, right? But it's not to recreate the content itself unless we really find a miss. And then in red, we finally disseminate that information, and that's done by staff. So in addition to its policy and advocacy work, FASEB also acts as a science society in many ways in advancing discovery and awareness of science. So we do have a fully featured scientific meetings and conferences program that is anchored by the science research conferences. We have anywhere from 25 to 45 of these small 100 to 150 person conferences per year. We also offer Catalyst conferences, which are virtual conferences of a half day to a full day in length. They are meant to catalyze future science research conferences. So they're kind of a bit of a test bed or a way for a small research community to get together in between in-person meetings. And then FASEB Conferences on Demand are our newest product. They are video recordings of portions of the science research conferences, and they are available on demand to individuals and institutions. And I'm going really fast, so if you're throwing a chat in there or something, please jump right in. Publications. FASEB publishes two journals. We partner with Wiley for that publication, for those publications. FASEB manages all interactions with the with our editors and authors through the acceptance process. So once an article is accepted, that's when Wiley takes over to finish the publication process for us. The FASEB Journal has been around for quite some time. It's top 10% in its field and publishes, I think this year we're going to be over 700 articles per year. FASEB Bio Advances is completely open access journal and is in year two of having an impact factor, year 4 of publication. All right. Now we're going to transition to the portion of the presentation that I was supposed to originally give, and give you a little bit on the operations and financials. I am going quickly because there's so much going on. So, please, if I need to slow down or go through things in a little more detail, let me know. So from an operations and financial standpoint, FASEB is headquartered in Rockville, Maryland. We rent a multi-purpose office suite in the building that you see here on the screen. One nice thing, if not the nicest thing, about the office space that we do maintain is that there's a large conference center in the lower level of the building, which we use for FASEB's board meetings and various other governance meetings. As of right now, given current financial situation and constraints, the FASEB board will only meet in person once per year in 2026. So we've been meeting in March associated with Capitol Hill Day, and we'll share that date with you soon. In terms of staff, here's the organizational chart. As I mentioned earlier, I report to the board of directors. And then all of the rest of the senior staff reports directly to me. We have a flat organizational structure currently. So from a financial standpoint and an IT standpoint, we partner with third parties to ensure we have best-in-class strategy and services in those two areas, because quite honestly, the dollars and the electrons don't care if they're doing it for a science society or anyone else. So we want to make sure we've got the best people possible to support those areas. However, other direct staff we have then, Sally's on this call today. We have a human resources department. Susan Susciafino is the lead for that. We also provide benefits services for 6 of our smaller member societies. I believe we have at least one person, if not 2, from AMP on the call here today. They're one of the customers of that benefits program. I've mentioned Jay-Z and Yvette earlier. Ellen Kwa is the director for legislative affairs to kind of round out the leadership of that group. And then we have some analysts also associated in those areas reporting into Yvette. Publications, we have Darla Henderson, another very senior leader in this group. Later, we'll talk about a new program that we're developing that is literally launching as we speak, called the Publications Consortium, and what Darla's role is in developing and leading that group. And then scientific meetings and conferences is Victoria Forlini. She also has a bigger title of strategic operations chief strategic operations officer. It's a bit of a mouthful. So in addition to the meetings and conferences, Victoria has been taking on some more of our strategy work as we're moving things forward and looking at our structure. So earlier I talked about the things we do for science. Those things we do for science also generate revenue. So the 4 main categories of revenue that FASEB has are, and these are in order of the financial contribution to the organization: publications, membership dues, science research conferences, society management services. I guess it depends upon your view of financial contribution, but either way, these are the main revenue sources for the organization, and you see them listed here on the left from a budget perspective. I will point out one additional line on income generating programs, and that is our DEAI and workforce development programs. FASEB had secured over $3 million in federal grants in 2024. And as I'm sure all of you are aware, with the current administration environment, those grants have been terminated at this point. We have reduced staff associated with that as well. But that was a new or growing income stream that we had worked hard to develop, but unfortunately is being taken off the table at this time. From a mission perspective, though, public affairs, the public and legislative affairs and science policy work does not generate significant revenue. Little tiny pieces if we give a course, but it's not a revenue generating area. And then, of course, within any organization, there's always quite a bit of general and administrative sort of work and governance work for the organization. So myself, Sally, are counted in general and administrative. All of that technology work, all of that finance work is all general and administrative. And this is what it lands up looking like.
Frank, sorry,
Yep.
I have a quick question. This is Rachel. With respect to the DEAI work, is there any chance that the Mosaic grant will be reinstated? I'm just saying that because, you know, I'm the director of a training program at UMBC, and that just got recently reinstated. It had been terminated because it was, you know, related to DEAI.
Yeah, I think that's I'm really glad you brought up that point, Rachel. Right up your alley in your role here for us. Yes, there is absolutely a possibility that would be reinstated, or that there'd be another angle that we might pursue. FASEB is a co-signatory on an amicus brief that was submitted in an APHA versus NIH case that's based in Boston. That has where APHA as the primary plaintiff has stated that those terminations are illegal. The lower court actually has stayed those terminations and agreed with the plaintiffs. So now it's bumped up, of course, immediately upon appeal to the appellate level, where we are also engaging in as a member of this amicus brief for that. So yeah, that continues to wind its way through, and we'll see what might come out of that. We have had to protect FASEB financially in the meantime, given the large investment of staff that we have in that area. But we do continue to fight for the broader workforce development programs, right, which are oftentimes tied in some ways to inclusion efforts. So let's see. Let's see and do what we can to try and make that turn. So the chart that you see here today, or see here in front of you, a little hard to understand. So first, let's focus on the bar chart going across the bottom, which shows those mission and functional programs that I just reviewed, right? So here you see pub and leg affairs and general and administrative. You also see a third component at the top on the left, and the peach color is technology transformation. When I joined the organization, we had really outdated technology and needed to invest. So all of that work was done several years ago. now it's ongoing operations. But as you can see, we've had higher and lower levels of general administrative expenses. We've been reducing them specifically, or in particular, over the last couple of years. But G&A is about 30 to 35% of FASEB's revenue. I'm sorry, 30 to 35% of FASEB's total revenue. In the dark blue at the bottom is our public affairs and advocacy efforts, and there you can see we invest a significant amount in advocacy, approximately $1.5 million in the Office of Public Affairs. The red line is the challenge for us. So the red line is the amount of surplus revenue or margin, profit, you may say, from those revenue generating programs. And ideally, you want that red line above the bars. You can see that the last time FASEB was profitable was in 2019, just after leading up to our campus sale, but that was driven by growth in the science research conferences and publications portfolios. Then you see the dip since with COVID in 2020, and kind of a similar sort of pattern since then. So later we're going to be talking quite a bit about, well, what the heck are we doing to get that red bar back on top, or that red line back on top of those bars. All right. So we're going to go into those task forces we talked about a little bit earlier, and the financial situation for FASEB in more detail now. So I just mentioned the DEAI programs and where we're at with those. While those programs, the lead program, as an example, I'm sorry, Fellows for the Future. Apologize, I'm mixing them up. While that program, that was an NSF funded program, while that has been terminated as of this time, we continue to move forward with our DEAI initiatives as an organization. Some of those components are subject to funding being made available, such as for CARES and for LEAD. But we continue to have a DEAI committee. We continue to respond to issues that are negatively impacting underrepresented groups in the workforce. We've just invested in that amicus brief that I talked about a little bit earlier to support bringing these programs back, as Rachel mentioned. So we really are continuing our commitment from a DEAI perspective. But as we know, right, it takes funding, it takes financial resources to drive a lot of these programs. So our first task force that I will mention is the Working Group Integration Task Force. Specifically within that group, there were several ideas or concepts that came out of it. But first and foremost that has developed is this Publications Consortium. The Publications Consortium brings together FASEB's publications and participating society publications under one staffing and management group to drive scale, which results in lower costs for publication and also results in greater opportunities for financial and publications growth. Here you see on the screen the estimates that Darla Henderson has provided over a 10-year period for just the FASEB journals without participating in the consortium versus participating in the consortium concept. So as you can see, quite a bit of a difference moving from without to with. We have 3 societies that are participating in the consortium to date. Mike Lehman Society, SEBM, is one of them. We also have the Society for the Study of Reproduction, SSR, excuse me, and the Shock Society, Melanie's society, participating in this effort. I will say it's moving along quite well. We're dealing with lawyers right now to get some final contracts and structure and all that sort of stuff in place. But Darla and her team are already working with each of those participating societies on the issues that are most impacting their journals today. Mike or Melanie, any comments that you'd like to make on this?
Yeah, we recently had our annual meeting, and the editor-in-chief of Shock, the Shock Journal, really advocated for this after seeing all the figures and the potential benefits. It was definitely worth us buying into this. So that's what we ended up deciding to do. So hopefully it'll keep growing, and it'll be beneficial for everybody.
Yeah, I think this is a real opportunity area for us, and one in which, as society-based journals, we can really use to the advantage of each of our member societies as well as for FASEB. So I think there's a lot of enthusiasm for, again, kind of moving this forward. I'm really glad to hear about the Shock Society, Melanie.
Yeah. You'll be hearing much more on this as a new board member as this continues to move forward. There's a lot more to this. But we just don't have time to get into it today.
We have time for a quick question, Frank.
Sure.
I like this idea, but what is the there's a projection here with consortium. Is there an assumption on the number of participating societies to create that savings projection?
Yeah. So there's a couple of different areas of value there, Cliff. One is a projection of lower per journal, lower per article costs for the journals. So the cost that FASEB's incurring today gets spread over a bigger base, right? So that starts to dilute, slow down the growth in costs. Number one. Number two, it allows additional investment in other resources to drive growth. Some marketing investment is in there in terms of that area. And then the biggest issue is in scale. So being able to negotiate over time with the publishers, whether it's Wiley, which FASEB uses, or Frontiers, or another publisher, which the other societies are using, that group buying power allows us to negotiate more favorable royalty rates, signing bonuses, those sorts of things.
Yeah, those are great. I guess my question was, in order to achieve the results shown in the right side, are the two or so existing participating societies sufficient to achieve those savings, or do you need all the societies to bring their journals in? I'm trying to understand what assumption was made in terms of the number of societies that would join to achieve that level of savings.
Yeah, so I won't give you a definitive number because I don't have that right now, Cliff. I believe it's 3 to 5, and we're in that range. Darla has stood by these projections when we just redid our scenarios, so I think she's confident in the numbers that we have now.
Yeah,
Cliff, my recollection is 3 to 5. Sorry, Mike.
It's okay, Cliff. I think it's fair to say that with the number that we have right now, we will have revenue. We will have, but the more that join, the more money that we basically are able to generate from this, and more savings that we can get as societies.
Thank you.
All right, next we have a membership strategy task force. Here you see the overall timeline for that group. This group is charged with reviewing FASEB's existing membership strategy, talking with leaders of our members, member societies, and developing any recommended changes to that structure. Right now, the task force is in the process of finalizing some new models that we will be developing, both from a value perspective, right? So what benefits come with each of those member models, and then what the financial model looks like as a result of that. So we're just starting that right now. You received a brief update at the board meeting on Tuesday of this week, and there will be more to come. But overall, we are on target to provide recommendations to the board in September. The next task force, and directly related to the Membership Strategy Task Force is the Governance and Bylaws Task Force. So the new membership structure and the new needs of the organization from an operations management perspective is impacting the way in which volunteers guide the organization. And we need to review that and make sure that we have the right volunteer structure to complement the staffing structure for the organization. So that's what this group is in place to do. They've just had their kickoff meeting. We're going to start reviewing the existing governance structures, identifying any challenges and concerns with the existing structures, and then integrating the recommendations from the membership strategy work into this task force's work. So this task force is purposefully staggered a few months later than the membership strategy. They will be making their final recommendations to the board in December. So again, you're going to be receiving regular reports from this group on their progress and what they've identified, and be asked to provide some input to them so they can course correct throughout their timeline. Finally, I wanted to talk about the financial scenarios for the organization. So the board has been spending quite a bit of time on this. Earlier, I shared the one summary graph, right? Remember the bars being expenses and the line chart being margin, and we need to get that line above the bars in quick summary, and we've not been doing that. So as a part of that, staff over the last 6 months has been developing multi-year scenarios, which were first presented to the board in March, and then updated based upon board feedback and presented again just in June. This one summary table, I think, does a pretty good job of summarizing kind of where we're at. Right now, FASEB is running about a $2 million loss per year. Based upon different market conditions, the external environment impacting FASEB, and internal investments and changes we make, we develop 3 scenarios. One, a very positive scenario, if you will, where both the external environment and FASEB is reinvesting in science. The second one is more of a steady state sort of example, which would refer to more of a 2024 sort of operating level. And adverse, quite honestly, is where FASEB is at today. The environment we find ourselves in today, and your societies find themselves in today, would definitely be considered an adverse scenario. It is impacting meeting attendance. It's impacting submissions to our publications. It's impacting membership decisions to join or renew with the society or with FASEB. So the various scenarios outline different models and what our income would be by 2030. What you can see then in the third column is if everything was great, we could break even by 2026. It's not. 2030 is the current target for our break-even year. And without investment, we are predicting that FASEB reserves would be depleted by 2030 as well. So you see some of the key drivers on the right side there. The takeaway for the new board members is we're going to be having discussions over the next several months over ways to both reduce costs and where we have to invest in order to grow revenues to make sure that we reverse this trend. Cliff?
Frank, is the net income or loss operating income or loss, or is it inclusive of investment earnings?
It's a bottom line net.
Bottom line, okay. So there's risk in the investment portfolio baked into this too.
Yep. And as you know, not only is there risk, but even with the returns, right? If you continue to draw down on your reserves, the investment returns go down themselves, right? So they aren't able to contribute as much. So it's definitely not the path that we want to be on.
I have a question. This is Roberta.
Mhm.
With so many initiatives and task forces, etc., you always talk about staff. How many people are staff members? So I would imagine paid by the FASEB with salary.
22 staff. And then we have dozens of different vendors providing services.
And it would be possible to know how their FTEs are located for each activities that they are asked to do. I mean, it's just would be kind of a little bit easier perhaps to provide any feedback on how, yes, to maybe save some money on activities that don't work, or how many staff is, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, so we do have that. We do have that information, Roberta. It's in a couple of other slides, not in this deck today. And I see we're at our time, so we won't get into it. But yes, we have that, and can reshare that with you.
Thank you.
I'm just going to touch briefly on this because, and this is the last slide. The last major element of area of focus, I will say, for the board today is the transition of the executive director. On June 19th, the board made a decision to move forward with a restructuring that I proposed that refocuses the executive director position on the public affairs and advocacy work. So this table summarizes what that looks like. Just a couple of key points. One, that means that I will transition out of the organization no later than the 1st of January 2026. There are two components associated with that to note. One, once that restructuring is complete, we estimate approximately a little bit over $500,000 in savings per year. There will be a reduction of one full-time equivalent. Roberta, kind of to your point of where are these staff positions. So we're going to save about $500,000 a year once we make these changes. And then in my contract today, there's a significant severance payment of approximately $1.1 million that would be due on January 1st. In the meantime, I am interviewing now to try and find another position so that we can avoid FASEB having to make that severance payment. So I'm going to do my best to avoid that. But that is to be determined. This is a major, obviously a major financial impact for FASEB. It's a major operating impact for FASEB as well. So I wanted you to be aware of this. This was happening just as you were being named to the board. So I'm going to be quiet now. Eric, Mike, anything you would like to close with for the day?
Sure. So if you're not a little bit shocked by now that you're not coming in to just do advocacy, you're knee deep in structural and governance and membership changes. It's going to be a very, very intense time whereby we're really going to need your input and a vast array of opinions. And I guess it's not a warning per se, but get ready to buckle up. We're going to be making a lot of important decisions, and we're really going to need your assistance on this. So this is one of the reasons why we've ramped up our onboarding and to try to provide you with a considerable amount of information to get you up to speed on where we are currently, because these decisions will determine the future of FASEB significantly, whether there will be a future of FASEB. So let's get ready to learn, identify some avenues in which we can get some traction, and let's make some hay on this. And I appreciate you all being here today. Mike, did you have anything to add?
But just ditto to what Eric said, just to add to that, that if you have any questions or you want to chat or talk about any of this stuff, contact Eric and I directly. We're more than happy to talk about it. I think one of the great things is that our volunteer leadership, we're really interactive. It's a great collegial group, and we're really committed to the future of FASEB. We know how important it is in terms of public affairs and advocacy and all the other programming that we do. And as Eric said, it's going to be a tough time for us and an intense time, but we're here for each other. So any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us, please.
Yep.